got a temp job working in the IMF. I was at the IMF Family Association. And so, you know, now I got a roof over my head. I'm living up on Capitol Hill in a tiny little room with no heat, but at least there's a roof over my head and you know, bathroom and uh, so I'm working at the IMF Family Association, and you know, they do the same thing as the American Women's Clubs overseas, the Expat Wives Clubs that I was very involved with in Bogota, and then I had been a member in Paris and Brussels. But of course, with babies, I wasn't involved in any of the board or anything. Um, so I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. And I actually even thought, well, maybe the IMF Family Association would be interested, the board members. I mean, this is exactly what they do as well, but I'm working globally. They are global. I'm thinking they'd be interested. Oh, no. The only thing, same deal, just a bunch of social climbing expat, you know, wives who have moved abroad. I mean, this is even within the research and the stats on what's going on with the trailing spouses, because there is some research by psychologists, sociologists, and you know, all these, everybody's doing research that show it's the expat wives, but as well, one of the reasons that all of these, and these are the corporate people and the diplomatic corps and the international development community, they do it because for the money, because housing's paid for, schooling's paid for, jet setting around the world's paid for. Often, if it's, you know, definitely the low income countries, but even the middle income countries. I mean, we had our country club membership paid for in Bogota, because of course it puts you in contact with the ruling elite of Bogota, because that's part of the job. And so they do it for the money. I mean, my family's been traveling abroad. My father started lecturing back in the 60s. He's a cardiologist, thrombosis. I'll get into my father later. And we moved abroad. I'd grown up in Tucson. We moved abroad the first time in 77 to England. And I went to a boarding school, Cobham Hall there. My ex-husband later in our divorce, because I go to Cobham Hall in England. I mean, my roommate is Lady Henrietta Bathurst, whose brother is Earl Bathurst, a good friend of Prince Charles. Jenny Churchill is at the school. Venita Gupta, she ends up, I mean, her family is some of the ruling elite wealthy. I mean, she married rich. I mean, her family wasn't poor, believe we used to get chauffeured around by the limousine and her the chauffeur in London, and taking us back to school and stuff. But but my ex in Foxcroft, I went to Foxcroft School in Middleburg, and my ex transforms this in during our divorce and his manipulations before, that I was a drug addict that was sent to reform school at 14 years old. God, are you stupid or what? So anyway, we you know, this we had already been moving abroad for a long time, and so, you know, I had been in this world forever. So, you know, that's also why I came up with global expats, because I know a lot of influential ruling elite women, mainly around the world in the corporate and diplomatic corps. And no, they're not interested. The IMF Family Association board members, they're only interested, the only other interest that these women have, because now it's not you know, they do have degrees, college degrees. Some of them MBAs or, you know, lawyers, but no, all they're looking for is how to get a job and one of them was divorced, I guess, so she was looking for her next rich husband. Then Then I come in and I find, I'm like, oh my goodness, you people, this is an administrative nightmare. This is bad as what I found in the Expat Wives Club and what I tried to clean up when I'm president of Bogota. I put a whole thing together. There were the floppy disks at the time. I even gave it to the ambassador's wife, Daniel Parfait, Nicole Parfait. It was typical intellect of too busy to be discussing the important things of the world to bother herself with the lowly expat families. I mean, you talk about your pretentious intellects. Well, Astrid, who was his mistress at the time, became his second wife. Well, I mean, she's no intellect, but she wasn't much more intelligent. This is Ingrid Betancourt's sister. Well, Ingrid Betancourt, another one in the whole story, along with Balthazar Garçon. That's why I said Balthazar Garçon. I've been doing this under universal jurisdiction. When you came into the Kalari, I said Balthazar Garçon should be submitting all of this to the international court. But he, along with Ingrid's too busy in her ivory tower in Oxford, and the critics of Balthazar Garçon are right. Balthazar Garçon, the only thing he cares about is getting up on the podium and giving a speech, just like all the rest of them. So the IMF Family Association, this was in 2009. This is right after Obama gets in, spring that I started working for them. So during the summer, I mean, nothing had been, they had boxes of stuff all over the place. I mean, the place was an administrative nightmare. I cleaned up everything, threw out all of the old stuff. I had to go through everything because anything financial had to be kept. That was all put in files. I found some, from McNamara's era in the beginning, and I did a little like history, corner with those photos, and I organized everything that I got into their computers because there was nothing there. Really would go in just like I've seen since, these stupid secretaries. All they do, they have no file system. They type in, anything that pops up. I'm like, this is okay, but the Patsy Geyers is having a fit up in heaven. Patsy Geyer was Senator Johnston's executive assistant. And I'll send you links that I did for blogs in 2015 for the Institute for Capacity Development at the IMF, saying, you people, what you really need in good governance is 1,000 Patsy Geyers in this town. And we will run out all of the idiots you got working in your administrative function and all of the PhDs and MBAs who never graduated from kindergarten and don't understand a thing about what they're talking about. I mean, this whole, everybody wants to be a manager. Everybody wants to be a manager. Too many chefs spoil the soup. As I get into my activism work, our problem is managerialism, Burnham 41, affirmative action, which is diversity in there, and the alpha dominance feminist. I pick up where Betty Friedan left off, but I want to see everybody in court. I'm not retiring into academia and sit in some freaking ivory tower. No way. I didn't bring my 2 sons into this world to be used as cannon fodder and to play the ivory tower game that all of my former classmates are playing, all of the expats are playing. I mean, they really, they need to be shamed. My mom's a Catholic. She learned me and she taught me the shame game. I was some of Jewish and Muslim friends and Hindu friends. I don't know who cornered the market, but my mom was a real pro. So I do such a good job of that. The incoming, so Frances McRae, she was the chair of the IMF Family Association. Her husband was one of the EDs, executive directors, and he was from Canada, and he was called back to Canada because I forget which who had been voted in, and he was going to be in the Treasury department there. So he was called back. She stepped down, and in comes Beatrix Keller Semedini. Oh gosh. Well, apparently she and my mother, two peas in a pod. So apparently she was so impressed with everything that I had cleaned up. And I mean, I had, organized all of their files, the physical ones, but also in the computer. I had done a whole flow chart of, I've been doing this for how many years? I've been president of these associations, and believe me, I had resisted and been approached various times over the years. And, I was like, you guys, these little women from the French embassy do not want an American, particularly if I weighed 300 pounds and was gum chomping. That would have fit more into what they like to think about Americans. So that would have been more acceptable. So, Anne Beatrix thinks, this is great. I can cash in here. So she starts with her little games with the IMF HR department, because really I don't have any contacts. I'm only with the IMF spouses, and I have one contact person in HR. Her name is Adrienne Thapa. Actually, it was Shamut, who was the first one, another woman, but then it became Adrienne Thapa, who comes in later in the story. So I have no contact with HR. And so Anne Beatrix is over at HR, working all of them, which is not hard to do. Believe me, they're all a bunch of social climbing. Oh my Lord, I worked there for 7 years. I saw my dose. And convinces them that I'm a useless, I'm the useless parasite social climbing trophy wife who doesn't know how to do anything, who's totally incompetent, totally inept, and in fact, claiming overtime that had never been approved by her, and gets rid of me. And this whole overtime thing is going to bite her in the ass when I finally get everybody into court, because in fact, the administrative part had been such a mess. I cleaned that up, that I reduced all of the overtime that they had been doing, which is about 10% of their budget under Frances McRae. But then when this Anne Beatrix came in, she was such a catastrophe. It was particularly their Chronicles magazine, that she was constantly, telling me do this, do that, because since I didn't have heat in my room on Capitol Hill, and I had a better computer system, not just my tiny laptop at the IMF. I kept the office open until usually 9 or 10 o'clock, because I didn't want to walk too late. Back then, I'd usually work until about midnight, 1 o'clock, until I get up in the morning and go back to work. So I keep the office open, but I said after 5 o'clock, when I get off the clock, then, or 5:30, then I'm going to be doing my own, research, and I had just been starting at this point, building my case against the Spanish government, because I did tell my lawyers I would take them to the international courts for everything that they did, and they said, go ahead, lady. Who are you going to tell? What do we care? We do this all the time. So I knew from the beginning my ultimate goal and path was going to be international courts. I've been around the block long enough to know the bureaucratic bullshit that I had gone through. It was just going to be covered up and covered up and covered up, and it was. And I'll get back into that case. So she ousts me. She gets rid of me. I mean, totally legal what she did. Totally, totally, totally. And I even told her when she told me that she was getting rid of me. I mean, that's just the way she did it. I told her, and John Harper was there. She had to have an ally, because she was afraid that she would feel too threatened by me if she met with me alone. And believe me, the two of them, they could have had the whole freaking board there, and I wouldn't have been intimidated one little bit. because they know about my case. They know about what's going on in the courts. They know I'm screaming bloody murder. They know I'm going to the international courts. I mean, I'm like, you really want to go up against me? I'll just put you on the gravy train. I was like, I've started to call it the gravy train. So everybody's like, I don't care. And there was one person on the board who said, wait a second, you can't do that. One woman, she was a retiree actually, and she did this brochure every year. That was really all. It was a thank you luncheon that they would do for all the volunteers. And Ann Sinclair came to that. That's when I met Ann Sinclair. And my little discussion with Ann Sinclair that day is not going to look pretty for Ann Sinclair when this whole thing comes to head, particularly after what happened with Dominique Strauss-Kahn later on and everything that's going on with the Huffington Post. Believe me, this is a convoluted, Washington wants to play Rome. This is what happens. So they oust me. So, okay, fine, get on the gravy train. I mean, I'm only earning, it was through a temp agency, and I'm only earning, minimum wage. And in fact, the temp agency, the employment agency, I did tell the woman, Rivera, what had happened. She actually, is it Yvonne or Yolanda? I always forget. With Career Blazers, now it's Global Employment. Her first interview with me, she said, I'm never going to find your job because anybody interviewing you is afraid in 6 months you'll have their job. And that's been my problem time and time again.